Wagi Shyac， 大家好，欢迎收看一打看世界，一起看世界，我是Wagi。
我是拉瑙。一打不仅要带大家一起 see the world， 更要用我们的方式说世界的故事。国际新闻首先来关注，澳洲在5月3日举行国会大选，现任总理艾班尼斯率领的工党大获全胜。虽然澳洲民众生活受到通膨与房价高涨的影响，在选前对政府表达诸多不满，但右派在野联盟没有提出更好的政策，更因为美国总统川普关税政策反复无常，让右派整体形象大受打击，结果让艾班尼斯成为20年来第一位成功连任的澳洲总理。
澳洲5月3日举行国会大选，结果显示，现任总理艾班尼斯率领的工党大获全胜，得票率与国会席次都比上次大选提升，也意味着艾班尼斯将继续担任总理职位。他在胜选感言中表示，选民选择用澳洲的方式面临现今的挑战。
In this time of global uncertainty, Australians have chosen optimism and determination. Australians have chosen to face global challenges the Australian way, looking after each other while building for the future.
澳洲政治竞争激烈，艾班尼斯成为20年来第一位成功连任的总理。但短短几个月前，工党还在民调中明显落后。许多观察者一度认为，右派的自由党与国家党联盟将重返执政。没想到右派不但惨败，就连在野领袖 Dutton 本人也输掉自己保有20多年的国会席次，可说是选举日最大冷门。
Yeah, with the landslide, I didn't see a landslide coming. I think what's happening in America now badly affected Canada, and it did, and it badly affected us as well. But I was surprised Dutton lost his seat. This reminds me of, 10 years ago when John Howard lost his seat to a total nobody from AB not-for-profit ABC. So, yeah, I was surprised.
专家表示，澳洲与许多国家一样，近几年面临通货膨胀与高房价等问题，引发民众对政府不满。但在野党并没有提出具说服力的对策，却提出新建核能电厂以及大幅裁撤联邦公务员等极具争议的主张，让多数选民最终还是相信工党是较为稳健的选择。
They forgot to offer the solutions, so that people agreed with the opposition, perhaps that life was tough and, high inflation and housing crisis, lots of other problems. But the opposition needed to go further and convince the electorate that they had the answers to these things. And in the end, it was the government rather than the opposition who was able to say, well, yes, we admit times are tough, but we think we've put forward a positive set of policies to move forward.
不过，令澳洲原住民失望的是，艾班尼斯在2022年大选中将原住民族肯认列为重要政见，但在2023年原住民族筑宪公投失败后，原住民族议题几乎从政坛消失。而在野党领袖 Dutton 甚至表示，如果当选总理，会撤下所有官方媒体活动的原住民族旗，让族人担心对于原住民族的歧视再次高涨。
Aboriginal people have been used as political football for many, many years, and I think those embers of racism that were evident in that colonisation period, the fans are blowing those winds of racism across this country again.
而值得注意的是，加拿大与澳洲两国相隔不到1周举行大选，结果都是左派的执政党在原本不被看好情况下，最终胜选连任。许多观察者认为，美国总统川普关税政策反复，又对传统盟友多次发表不友善言论，对这2场选举有很大影响。左派执政党透过树立与川普对抗的倾向，赢得不少选民的支持。而两国领袖现在以反川普立场，通过选举考验未来与美国的互动，也十分值得关注。
继 续带您关注澳洲大选结果。工党领袖阿班尼斯顺利连任，但原住民族群担忧的争议，选后仍持续延烧。他们担心过于强调意识形态，反而可能掩盖了真正该解决的问题，也再度呼吁政府缩小差距的承诺应该真正落实在政策上。
澳洲于5月3日完成国会改选，选举结果由工党领导人艾班尼斯继续执政。他在胜选后的首次演讲中，向澳洲原住民喊话，表达持续支持及肯认。
I pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging. We will be a government that supports reconciliation with First Nations people. Because we will be a stronger nation when we close the gap.
现任原住民族事务部长麦卡锡参议员在北领地选区连任成功后，再一次强调人民拒绝分裂，要走一条让所有澳洲人更靠近的路，加强落实偏乡粮食安全与增加在地就业的政策。
The people of the Northern Territory have joined with all Australians to say we love our country. We do not want to see division in this country, especially with our First Nations people.
针对在野党领袖 Dutton 有关在官方媒体活动中撤下原住民旗帜，以及抨击 Welcome to Country 这种具原民主体性的欢迎仪式，在运动赛事或军事纪念活动中以过度举办等争议性主张，尽管引发可能助长歧视的批评，但部分原住民领袖认为，若政策讨论始终停留在意识形态层面，原住民族的处境恐怕只会更加边缘化。
Aboriginal people are going to continue to be marginalised. The gap is going to get wider because we take an ideological approach to all of these issues, and Labor will continue to do that. They'll invest money in organisations and not listen to the little people on the ground. But I'll continue to fight.
Firstly, housing, health, and education. Welcome to country. I believe that's just a tactic of politics to get the real issues out of the way.
而在选前，超过100名来自昆士兰各地的第一民族领袖齐聚雪堡原住民社区，分享彼此社区的挑战与成就。其中也再一次提到应正视原民监禁率比例过高的问题，并真正聚焦住房、医疗等迫切的民生议题。
As a First Nation leader, I would have loved to see government policy or government talk about how they're going to address the high incarceration rates of First Nations people that are represented through the legal system, how they're going to address our young people that's taken into custody, how they're going to address improving the livabilities of our community so our people can live longer, healthier, stronger.
西雪梨为人口结构多元化的关键地区，有超过54000名的原住民族居住在这里。尽管有多个选区是工党的基本盘，但选民们的讯息很明确：不论谁当政，都得更努力来真正缩小差距。
The issues that our community has raised are not being addressed by any of the parties at the moment. We hope that whomever forms government will really have a listening ear for the closing the gap priorities.
对原住民族社会而言，健康、住房、就业、气候应对与粮食安全等议题的解决仍是首要任务。艾班尼斯在2个任期后能真正落实多少对原住民族的政治承诺，将被持续检视。
加勒比海国家圣文森及格瑞纳丁是台湾长期的外交盟友。下一段回来，IDA Spacious 主题特写专访博安卓大使，畅谈台湾如何透过奖学金与教育资源的协助，深刻影响两国外交邦谊。We are honored to welcome today's distinguished guest, the Ambassador of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to the Republic of China, Taiwan, Andrea Bowman.
Thank you very much for this welcome. Thank you very much for having me here. Hello to the audience here in Taiwan and to the worldwide audience, particularly the audience in St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
As one of Taiwan's staunch diplomatic allies, St. Vincent and the Grenadines is located in Caribbean, yet maintains a long-standing and close relationship with Taiwan. Ambassador Bowman, could you kindly give our audience a brief introduction to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, including its geographical location, cultural features, and key areas of national development?
I'm very happy to do that. St. Vincent and the Grenadines, 32 islands, one country, is located in the southern eastern Caribbean. Okay? Our country is 150 square miles. We take up that much space, 150 square miles. And our main island, which is St. Vincent, is 133 square miles. Now, as I said, we are 32 islands and keys, but we have 9 fully inhabited Grenadine islands. Okay? Our population is recorded as 110,000, but we have fewer people than that, fewer people than 110,000. We are predominantly of African descent. Okay, we have about 66% of our population is of African descent. And then after that, we have what we may refer to as mixed ethnicity. And we have people of East Indian descent, people of Portuguese descent, people of European descent, and of course, as I said before, we have Garifuna. All right? So we have a multi-ethnic society.
Just like Taiwan.
Yes. On our main island, St. Vincent, we have our capital city, Kingstown, and not Kingston, as in Jamaica. And our official language is Standard English, though our population, we speak Vincentian Creole English. Our main sources of income are through agriculture and tourism, though our government is the major employer of the people in our country. I just want to say that St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have lush forest, lush vegetation, wonderful black and white sand beaches. We have the best waters in the Caribbean for diving and sailing. We have a tropical paradise. It's the Caribbean you're looking for.
Ambassador Bowman, you were appointed as ambassador to the Republic of China, Taiwan from August 1st, 2019, while on August 8th, the Embassy of St. Vincent and the Grenadines was established in Taiwan. Could you kindly explain the importance of St. Vincent and the Grenadines opening an embassy in Taiwan?
We opened our embassy here on the 8th of August, 2019. Now, the 8th of August is actually the birthday of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, and as you know, that is Father's Day here in Taiwan. Now, 2019 August, when we opened our embassy, we had just been elected to serve as a non-permanent member of the United Nations Security Council for 2 years. We had just been elected and we opened our embassy in Taiwan soon after that. Right away there, you recognize that our coming here at that time was a means of showing our commitment to Taiwan. It was a means of concretizing our relationship with Taiwan. At that time, we had had 38 years of diplomatic relations with Taiwan, but this was the first time we were coming here to open our embassy. And when we did come, our embassy was described as the missing link embassy. Because of all the other allies that Taiwan had at that time, ours was the only country that had not had an embassy here. So coming here to open our embassy, our first embassy in Asia, as a matter of fact, too, was a way of concretizing, as I said, that relationship. Now, since we have been here, our main focus, was to try to ensure that Taiwanese see, hear, and understand St. Vincent and the Grenadines, this country with which Taiwan has been allied now for this year is going to be 44 years.
On March 14, St. Vincent and the Grenadines observed National Heroes Day, a solemn occasion that honors the nation's enduring struggle for freedom and the legacy of its heroes. To mark this important day, the embassy in Taiwan hosted a commemorative event on March 15, where Your Excellency was joined by approximately 60 students from across Taiwan in paying tribute to the nation's heroes. Your Excellency, could you share with us the significance of National Heroes Day and speak to the legacy of Joseph Chatoyer, an indigenous Garifuna chief, and his role in shaping the history of St. Vincent and Grenadines?
Okay, it's National Heroes Day, H-E-R-O apostrophe S, because thus far we have one national hero, and that is Paramount Chief Joseph Chatoyer. Now, it's very important for us to understand why St. Vincent and the Grenadines only has one national hero and the role of this one national hero. Joseph Chatoyer, as you pointed out, Garifuna Chief, Paramount Chief Joseph Chatoyer, was the first person to lead the fight for the sovereignty and the independence of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, to lead the fight for our sovereignty and independence against, particularly at that stage, the English colonists. Okay? St. Vincent and the Grenadines was able to hold off the full impact of English colonization, and French to a lesser extent, English colonization, until the Europeans were able to ensure that Chatoyer died, and until the Europeans were able to exile the Garifuna people, which Chatoyer led, exile them to an island just off the coast of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, just one of our islands, Baliso Island at the time. Now, this took place on the 14th of March, the actual death of Chatoyer was on the 14th of March, 1795, which is why we celebrate our National Heroes Day on that date. And then the full exile of the Garifuna people from St. Vincent onto Baliso, that took place in about 1797 and so on. After the British were able to do this, then they were able to establish quite a slave economy, a full-fledged slave society in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, okay? So Chatoyer is revered and thanked for fighting for the sovereignty of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So when we went to Walian on the 15th of March, that was the fourth consecutive time that we were going to Walian to actually celebrate our National Heroes Day, which is extremely important for us here in Taiwan. And as you said, we had not only Vincentian students and Vincentians living here, but we had other friends from our Caribbean region, you know, in that celebration as well. And we have to consistently remind our community, I think, about the significance of Chatoyer and why he deserves his place as our country's sole national hero.
And in March, the government announced the acquisition of Baliso, a privately owned island where thousands of Garifuna perished from starvation and disease following their forced exile in the late 18th century. The island is said to be designated a National Heritage Site, an important step toward acknowledging this painful chapter in Vincentian history. Ambassador Bowman, could you speak to the cultural and historical importance of the Garifuna people to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and what Baliso represents both to the Garifuna community and to the nation as a whole?
Baliso was where close to 2,000 Garifuna people perished, died. You know, it's like a graveyard for at least half of the Garifuna, who I said earlier were exiled from St. Vincent to Baliso in order for the British to establish their colonial settlement in the way in which they wanted it to be established without having to fight the Garifuna, who were trying to protect the sovereignty of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So they exiled the Garifuna to Baliso, and then after, as I said, about almost 2,000 of them died, they had the remainder shipped to Rotan Island in the Bay of Honduras. From Rotan Island, they went on to Belize and Nicaragua and what have you and so on. They live primarily in Belize, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And every year, a great number of them make a pilgrimage to St. Vincent and the Grenadines so that they can go to Baliso and pay homage to their ancestors. We need to honor that. So this is what we are doing now with the acquisition of Baliso. We are going to ensure that this island is valued for what it represents to the sovereignty of St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
St. Vincent and the Grenadines is one of Taiwan's 5 diplomatic allies in Caribbean. Given that the majority of Taiwan's diplomatic partnerships are concentrated in Latin America and the Caribbean, could you share how St. Vincent and the Grenadines collaborates with other regional allies to support Taiwan's international engagement, particularly in Caribbean context where Chinese influence has been growing?
Anyway, the point is, the 5 of us, these 5 allies, we belong to CARICOM, the Caribbean Community and Common Market. As a CARICOM group, we share that recognition of Taiwan's sovereignty. We are here because we recognize and respect Taiwan's sovereignty, and we are allied with Taiwan from that perspective. So at the CARICOM level, we work with Taiwan together in that type of way. As I said, CARICOM is an intergovernmental organization, so then you recognize from that perspective there, the governments of our 5 countries collaborate with regard to how Taiwan is treated from that perspective. Now, these governments our governments all take that unified perspective on CARICOM, on Taiwan, to the United Nations, to international organizations, to the World Health Organization, to WHA, to the International Civil Aviation Organization. We take that perspective of Taiwan to these organizations, and we speak together for Taiwan's inclusion, for Taiwan's sovereignty, for recognizing that Taiwan is made up of 23 million people who deserve to be recognized for who they are in the international arena. Okay, so that is how we work together. We have a unified front on Taiwan.
Ambassador, you bring with you a distinguished background in education, having served as a teacher for nearly 40 years and as a headmistress for 13 years. In light of your experience, could you speak to the significance of MOFA and ICDF scholarship programs? In your view, how do scholarship opportunities and cultural exchange initiatives contribute to deepening the bilateral ties between St. Vincent and the Grenadines in Taiwan?
In 2001, during a visit of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Ralph Gonsalves, to Taiwan, he met with the then President Chen Shui-bian, and that's when he presented to the then President the idea of the MOFA ICDF scholarship. So it was on our Prime Minister's initiative that those scholarships actually came into force in 2004. Okay, so we are very proud of that. Of course, last year we celebrated 20 years of the existence of those scholarships. And right in one of these yearbooks here, we have our Prime Minister's message celebrating that 20-year period. So you know how proud we are. So since then, St. Vincent and the Grenadines has had about 276 of these MOFA and ICDF scholarships, and our students have done extremely well, extremely well. They have not all gone back to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, but they are spread all over the world. And you realize, having had their education here in Taiwan, they are able to speak for Taiwan, speak about Taiwan, wherever they are in the world. In 2008, okay, the Taiwanese embassy at home started giving scholarships to primary, secondary, and tertiary level students in St. Vincent and the Grenadines to the value of $100,000 per year. Now, when I say giving scholarships at that level, what I mean is the value, that value of scholarship, that value was divided up among primary, secondary, and tertiary level students for their transportation to school, their nutrition, and their school utensils, books and what have you. Now think of this. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is made up of fewer than 110,000 people. If you are giving $100,000 per year since 2008 to school children in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, you realize right there how many families have been impacted by that kind of assistance, that kind of help. In 2017, $100,000 was increased to $200,000. Therefore, more children were able to benefit from this assistance. More children meaning more families.
Ambassador, environmental challenges have significantly impacted St. Vincent and the Grenadines in recent years, most notably with the eruption of La Soufriere in 2021 and the devastation caused by Hurricane Beryl in 2024. Could you share your reflections on the broader significance of these two events and how they have shifted national priorities and affect the lives of Vincentians?
La Soufriere, in recorded memory and in recorded history, first erupted in 1902, and at that time we lost almost 1,700 lives, 1,680 lives or something like that. It was in 1902. Now the next major eruption of La Soufriere was in 1979. And I remember that very well because I was a schoolgirl at the time and so on. That eruption took place on the 13th of April and our country was blanketed and what have you, but there were no lives lost, okay? In 2021, guess how many explosive eruptions we had on that day in 2021, on the 9th of April 2021. Anyway, I won't put you through that. We had 32 explosive eruptions. Now remember I told you St. Vincent and the Grenadines is made up of 32 islands and keys. So would you believe that La Soufriere had 32 explosive eruptions on that day? You know, that's very interesting. Anyway, the point is that those eruptions at that point, we had to evacuate 20,000 people and so on. The disruption was tremendous. We covered in ash and what have you. But again, no lives were lost. So what I'm pointing out to you is that over time, we have obviously learned to live with Soufriere and her unpleasant behavior. Okay? Soufriere is part of our country, part of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. This is who we are. Of course, Taiwan has been very helpful in that regard, in that quite a number of the courses and educational opportunities and experience building sessions that we have, particularly from ICDF, have to do with disaster preparedness, disaster adaptation, disaster, resilience, how we work with those situations. Now, when we had our Hurricane Beryl, that was terrible. We had it was an unprecedented Category 4, some say Category 5 hurricane, and it was nothing that we had ever experienced before. 3 Grenadine islands in particular, Union Island, Mairo, and Canawan, because they were devastated. Island in particular, only 9 buildings were unscathed. Everything else was, gone and so on. How do you deal with something like that? How do we adjust to a situation that we realize we are on the front line of the climate change, climate crisis, as it were? Okay? We have been, I must say, consistently in a space of recovery, reconstruction, and getting on with life. We are consistently in that space, okay, and learning every step of the way, learning while we live, because this is our home, all right? So our greatest lessons or our greatest methods of surviving. Obviously, you have to be learning from our experiences. We have our assistance from friends, but we have to do this for ourselves.
Okay. Additionally, you just mentioned that assistance from Taiwan. And beyond financial assistance, could you elaborate more to any ongoing or emerging areas of collaboration between Taiwan and your government in the fields of disaster preparedness, climate resilience, and environmental recovery?
This is one of our biggest areas of collaboration with Taiwan, consistently so. Now, following the 2021 eruption, La Soufrière, our embassy had an initiative which we call Community Revitalization Through Sport and Culture. Community Revitalization Through Sport and Culture. We launched an initiative here. And the thinking behind that initiative is that, look, these communities have been terribly disrupted, okay? But the communities have to rebuild. And they have to rebuild in a way where they recognize that the strength comes from within the community. What did we do here? We reached out to our Taiwanese friends, and we were able to receive donations of different means of community sporting and cultural things to promote cultural and community activity.
How do St. Vincent's people think this kind of assistance from Taiwan?
I can very confidently say Taiwan is known for this. Taiwan is known in St. Vincent and the Grenadines for this humanitarian outreach. Taiwan is known as a friend in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. For instance, I always draw reference to when we had our 4th anniversary of our bilateral relations between Taiwan and St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Our embassy had launched a competition. It was a logo and slogan competition to our entire diaspora, to every Vincentian. It was launched online to every Vincentian, okay? And the young ladies, the 2 young ladies who actually won that competition had never even been to Taiwan. But they came up with the slogan, friendship, freedom, prosperity. They were 19, 20 at that time. But what? Why were they able to come up with this? Why were they able to present that? Because they had grown up with knowing the role of Taiwan, to knowing how Taiwan works with and for St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So that's, you see, is my little picture there of the logo that they came up with. And as I said, they had never been here, but they have lived with and grown up with Taiwan to the point where they're able to express it in that kind of way. So how do Vincentians feel about these contributions? Taiwan is our friend.
Yeah. Thank you.
And finally, Ambassador Bowman, as one of only 4 female ambassadors residing in Taiwan, alongside Ambassador Peets of Belize, Ambassador Catil of the Marshall Islands, and Ambassador Fafaye of Tuvalu, your leadership stands as an inspiring example. And how do you see the influence of women in diplomacy evolving, and what unique contributions do you believe female ambassadors bring to shaping international relations?
You know, incidentally, there was a time when Taiwan had 15 diplomatic allies, and we had 15 ambassadors here. 9 of those ambassadors were female, you know. 9 were female at that time. This was up to about 2021. But in terms of leadership, I happen to be the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps only because I'm the ambassador who's been here for the longest time. Because those ambassadors whom you mentioned, those female ambassadors, they are significant leaders within their own right. I must say that with particular regard to St. Vincent and the Grenadines, our government has been particularly good at ensuring that we have diplomats and ambassadors at our permanent mission in New York, for example, and our mission to the OAS in Washington. Our mission in New York is our mission to the United Nations. Our mission in Washington is our mission to the Organization of American States, and we have female ambassadors in those roles. Particularly at our permanent mission in New York, we have a number of female diplomats. So St. Vincent and the Grenadines is doing pretty well with regard to the placement of female diplomats and ambassadors in strategic positions to advance a kind of policy which works best for children, women, men, families. You know, you have to move people along through your policies. And this is what I find governments have to do in order to ensure that the society moves along. And I think St. Vincent and the Grenadines has been trying, and we have been succeeding to some extent where that is concerned.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Bowman, for accepting today's interview.
My pleasure. I'm very pleased to have had the opportunity to have this interview. St. Vincent and the Grenadines is not large physically, but we have a large vision, and that's how we have been operating on the world stage.
Thank you, Ambassador. And let's take a short break. And for more stories from ITA See the World, please stay tuned.
今年4月，一名部落巡护员为自身安全开枪射杀一只打算进行攻击的黑熊，却因此触犯禁忌。下一段回来，ITA WIBN英语新闻一起来探讨与台湾黑熊共存的传统智慧。欢迎回到ITA看世界。台湾黑熊保育工作有成，却意外提升原乡部落人熊冲突的风险。从今年4月发生在花莲卓溪的黑熊枪杀事件，我们来进一步探讨人与熊的共存之道。今天的ITA WIBN英语新闻，首先带你一起来关注这则报道。接下来把时间交给英语主播拉瑙。
It's May 13th, you're watching ITA WIBN, I'm Lano. An indigenous village in eastern Taiwan was troubled by the appearance of a Formosan black bear in April. The bear attacked chicken farms and the dogs, causing fear among community members. An attempt by rangers to remove the bear came to a tragic end when the bear was shot by one of the team members out of fear for their own safety. And these unfortunate incidents violated community taboos against killing bears and highlighted the need for better ways to engage with these endangered animals.
The Bunun village of Xinkan in eastern Taiwan's Hualien County has been on alert since early April due to the appearance of a Formosan black bear, which attacked several chicken farms and killed at least 4 dogs. A team of rangers was sent to remove the bear, but a team member fired a shot out of fear for their own safety. The bear was too badly injured and had to be euthanized.
刚好昨天在9点的时候，就是在现场就一个转角就遇到刚好那个黑熊在攻击另外一只别人家民宅里面的狗，那攻击狗已经刚好被攻击致死啊，所以我们的人看到它也吓一跳，然后大声呵斥的时候，熊就突然转过身来，想要朝人这边来做攻击状。那我们的那个巡守队在紧急之下就开了一枪，朝他开了一枪。那中枪之后他就负伤，然后缓慢移动就往森林里面，然后结果后来停在溪沟边。
The Formosan black bear is listed as an endangered species in Taiwan and is widely considered a national symbol. The shooting and killing of the bear attracted nationwide attention and discussion. But for the ranger who fired the shot, who was a Bunun hunter himself, the killing of the bear was also a violation of community taboos. Local community members gathered at the site to perform a cleansing and veneration ritual. The Bunun people believe that killing a bear spirit will result in a poor millet harvest. The color of the millet grains will even turn as black as the bear's fur in punishment. The ritual is therefore necessary to ask the ancestral spirits and the bear spirit to once again protect the community and the year's crops.
有面对这样的一个状况的话，比如说好熊死了以后，这个人他必须要在山上，他暂时都不能回到家。那所有他吃的、所用的是我们家族人送，几乎每个礼拜要送物资给他，让他一直等到所有的小米收成结束以后，才可以下山。
Encounters between humans and bears have been on the rise in recent years. Many people know bears only through cute figures and stuffed animals, forgetting that they are powerful wild animals. The general public must learn how humans should engage with bears to ensure safety for both species. Indigenous peoples like the Bunun offer a model for how humans can respect bears while still maintaining proper boundaries.
Curious about how space affects plants' growth, Taiwan Space Agency sent seeds of 4 plants, including red quinoa, from Taiwan's indigenous areas on a journey to space for over 6 months. Now these seeds have returned to Taiwan and are being planted at Wusam Experimental Elementary School as part of an educational program on space-grown plants.
Planting Julius red quinoa seedlings in the soil symbolizes the continuation of cultural roots. What's special, however, is that these Julius seeds, which travel through space for 7 months, are now being planted alongside earth-grown Julius. Through this educational activity, students learn basic space knowledge while taking care of both plants and observing their differences as they grow.
看着太空跟一般红梨有什么不同的差异，我觉得很酷，因为我都没有上太空，植物就先上太空。
我们小美文化课程有一个红梨的元素进来，那所以他们也开始有做一些，除了观察之外，也开始做一些诗啊，或者是一些记录。那像这边有一些他们的一些记录的成果。
In 2020, Taiwan Space Agency joined JICSA's project, Space Seeds for Asian Future, to study the effects of space on seeds. Taiwan sent Julius, orchids, green peppers, and sunflowers into space. The Julius seeds from Jarbat village in Daran Township have since been replanted and nurtured back on the land of Jarbat.
其实我们的那种子都上过外太空了，那我就想说，那一定要回来。然后我觉得这个种子它能够发出什么样子，我们不知道，但是这个想象是可以给小朋友很多的无限空间想象的。
这些东西其实应该要更去落地了，所以我们把它办透这活动，然后我们希望把它在太空的教育在原乡做一个萌芽。
Julius is a vital crop for the Baiwan people. This project not only connects the community with space technology, but also broadens their view on space while blending tradition and innovation.
The Jiaxian construction section of the Highway Bureau launched a butterfly corridor project along Provincial Highway 27. In collaboration with the indigenous residents of Jogovol village in Shandiman Township, the project incorporates traditional sled stacking techniques to create a space that blends nature and culture.
The Liugui and Maolin districts in Kaohsiung lie along a key migratory route for purple crow butterflies. To reduce human disturbance and protect butterfly habitats, the Jiaxian construction section has promoted eco-friendly greening projects along Provincial Highway 27. Birds of the Juguvo village were invited to use traditional sled craftsmanship to build a safe habitat corridor for butterflies. An effort that not only enhances the roadside landscape, but also improves overall ecological function.
从小跟这个石头是一起生活的嘛，所以我们住在石板屋里面，所以我们已经有这样的一个跟这个石头的连结里面，甚至于我们在做这个有我们的做法，连它的反正我们都可以做得起来。
在台风或是地震的话，这个会跟着那个我们放的石头摇动。啊，如果是水泥的话，就水泥是固定的，硬邦邦的。所以，我们在叠的时候，我们很注意它的面向。
The gaps formed by the stacked slate not only provide drainage and ventilation, but also create habitats for insects. Additionally, the use of greenbelt designs to guide butterflies away from the roadway effectively reduces the risk of roadkill, creating a safer environment for their migration.
蝴蝶会在这边栖息的话，最主要它有它的一个水源，也有它需要的一些植物，包含这些我们的一个 紫花的一个长穗木，以及这些马丽金，以及我们的高氏泽兰的这些植物的话，这些是有它需要它密眼的一些植物，所以我们做了一些为栖息地的一个设计。
Slate houses are renowned as breathing buildings, and the use of similar craftsmanship to create the butterfly corridor extends this traditional technique into modern engineering. The result is a unique ecological landscape that blends nature and culture, while also helping more people appreciate the traditional wisdom of indigenous peoples.
秘鲁的 cosplayer 角色扮演爱好者，5月初齐聚首都利马，打扮成他们最喜爱的漫画、电影与科幻角色，参加1年1度的漫画日嘉年华。
粉丝们装扮成各种人气角色，展现最佳造型，也让所有参与活动的大人小孩们一起重温这些角色带给他们的美好回忆。我是Wagi，我是拉脑，感谢您的收看，下周再会。